thank you all for joining and attending. We're also recording this, so once we ended up, we'll send you the recording, but very happy to have you and talk about this topic. So first of all, maybe just have, before we dive in, have both Juliana and Kalina present themselves, and then I'll share a bit about myself and CrowdVocate, and we'll start with our actual topic. So Kalina, maybe you go first.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me. Everyone, my name is Kalina Bryant. I head customer advocacy at Asana and also have a very interesting podcast by the name of Unapologetic that talks about the business and layout. Happy to be here. Happy to go into deeper dives around organizational buy-in for advocacy programs. I'll pass it off to you, Juliana.
Thank you, Kalina. Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to be here today. I'm a global customer marketing director at SAP. Have been at SAP for 10 years, and I'm really excited to share my journey with you and what was the process to help build out the advocacy and customer marketing culture in a very large organization.
Great. So very excited to have you both and talk about how does one or a team deploy an advocacy-oriented culture. Maybe let me just kick us off by sharing the screen. So yeah, we're going to talk today about creating a culture of customer advocacy. What does it even mean? Why is it important? How can you do that and get some buy-in? We'll, of course, touch topics such as advocacy versus customer marketing and whatnot. So a few of the things we're going to talk about are around, why is customer culture, and having a culture of advocacy important? How do you get it? What is it even so? And of course, the mission of, customer advocacy and some principles, also customer marketing. How does advocacy tie with company success? It kind of all ties together. Best practices, and of course, your Q&A. So we love having questions and answers. We love kind of having interactive discussions. These sessions, these webinars are by practitioners for practitioners, so feel free to ask anything. And in the Zoom, we have Q&A. So ideally, if you could put it in the Q&A and not in the chat, just will be easier for us to follow and answer. Before we kick off, a few things about, just CrowdVocate in general. So first of all, to those who don't know me, my name is Gal. Nice to meet you all. I'm the co-founder and CEO of CrowdVocate. Super excited to have these webinars and have you join us and really share knowledge by other people in the industry. We believe that customer marketing and customer advocacy kind of, are combined in a bigger journey, in a bigger kind of post-sale customer engagement and lifecycle journey. And about today's topic, kind of think about what does it mean to have, an advocacy embedded culture in everything. So for example, when you're onboarding new customers what does it mean to have, a culture of advocacy? Maybe you can ask them for their feedback, even when they onboard, even when it's early. So you're not asking for a customer story, but something should take place there. And of course, in events. So a customer advocacy kind of culture would have even the event people not only look for speakers, which is one element of advocacy, but maybe also get customer feedback on how was the event or what they want to see different or what topics they want. So it's always embedding, always thinking, what do we improve in the community? When we talk about general feedback, like what should we improve in our product, of course, what should we improve in our service? So every team, I give this example many times where all of us, at least in the advocacy and customer marketing space, know CABs, customer advisory boards, and Kalina is the pro and she's going to dive into that. But think about having not just customer advisory boards for the C-level, for the management to meet, but a product customer advisory board and customer success customer advisory board and product marketing or just marketing, marketing talk about messaging. Marketing should have a customer advisory board to ask what values they found in the product so they could use that in messaging. So even R&D, of course, every department in your organization can be more tied into customers, and that's part of it, and have their own subset of advisory board and subset of advocacy. And I think that's a wider notion that we want to talk about or start thinking about with our organization about, culture of advocacy or embedding advocacy in the organization. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Just a few words about CrowdVocate. So we're basically building the category of customer marketing. We have a lot of events like this for the community. I'll talk about another event we're having later this, or participating later this month. There's an industry job board. There's loads of more than 2,000 jobs out there on LinkedIn. We can't post all of them, but I mean, if you're interested in jobs in the customer advocacy, customer marketing space, reach out to us. Maybe we can connect you. Definitely try to help you build, even stuff like CVs or whatnot, and just make sure that you get great jobs. But if you're happy with your job, we're super happy to have people happy in their jobs. So don't reach out to us. And then we have like the Slack community, more than 700 people there. If you want to join us, we'll put the links later and you can join the Slack community. It's also a great place to talk to experts and other stuff. This month, just so you know, aside from this webinar, there's a great event. It's run by the Product Marketing Alliance. If you know that, great. If you don't, that's a good time to join them. We're doing a workshop on the 29th, the end of the month. So I'm doing it together with Scott, probably a few other people. We're going to talk about, it's going to be like a 1-hour workshop about engaging the customer lifecycle, rolling out a global program, automating referenceability, and, becoming strategic. A lot of topics for 1 hour, but we'll see. And then we're going to have I'm going to have a keynote on the event day itself, September 30th. You should block the day. There's more than 20 great speakers on that day. Really take that day off and just, learn from a lot of other experts. I'll be talking about what I've learned. So I'm actually going to aggregate a lot of the stuff that I've learned in all these webinars and all these sessions. We've worked with great companies and take my learnings from them and share it with everybody. So hope to see you in that event as well. Aside from that, we're hoping to have monthly webinars. Next few ones, we're going to talk about upsell one-on-one. How can customer marketing teams start, influencing upsell? We're going to talk about influencers and thinking strategically about customer advocacy, and any other topic that you want, just bring it. If you can talk about it, definitely happy to look into that and have a webinar with you. 2 words about CrowdVocate. We're basically the customer marketing platform. We do everything from customer engagement and advocacy and referenceability and connecting to CRMs and tracking the customer journey and connecting to all the touch points like in-app messaging for advocacy and in-community messaging and whatnot. And yeah, if you're interested, of course, feel free to reach out. And last thing before we start, like every webinar, we're going to run a poll. Happy to get your answers. We kind of compare those, and we're going to start using those stats and share that with everybody. And for those who answer, I'm going to have 20 people win different books from these or other ones you choose. So happy to have you answering our poll. With that, I'm going to shut up and let Juliana and Kalina start their journey with what they've done to help their organizations become more advocacy culture oriented. And yeah, let's start with that. So I guess,
Perfect.
Before we dive in, Kalina, how do you want to start this?
Yeah, I actually have a few slides just to kick us off, just to sort of set the tone as to how to actually get the buy-in, how to start the conversation. Personally, this is what I've been focused on at Asana. And then Juliana, I'd love it if we could just kind of chime in and really showcase like the difference between advocacy and customer marketing and how we really work in parallel to find success and really put our customers first. So I'll go ahead and just pop up our screen on my end. All right. Can you see that okay, team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So when I first joined Asana, I started really looking at what does our key stakeholders look for with our customers? Where do we need to gather additional insights, and how do we continue to build engaging, compelling stories with our customer base? And so within all of this, I realized we needed to have a key baseline, but we really needed to showcase the value of customer advocacy and really understand where we're going to start off with first. There's multiple programs. You have customer advisory boards, you have executive briefing centers, you have reference programs, you name it. But as a person that's first starting off with customer advocacy, you want to set yourself up for success. So you can't take on all the programs at once. So really getting the buy-in and understanding what does the company need first to align with their business plans. And so with that, I really started to take a step back and think about, well, how do we actually measure our success? When you think about all of our wonderful programs, let's just say customer advisory boards, how do you actually measure that as a successful program? I started thinking about our engagement layout, started thinking about how do we influence revenue? How do we increase and find expansion opportunities? How do we find upsell opportunities? And how do you really work hand in hand and become a partner with your AEs, with your strategic account executives, with your customer success team? And then lastly, adoption. How do you drive adoption, not just for the product, but how do you drive adoption within engagement within your customer base? So these were the three baselines that I've tried to focus on that allowed us to get the attention of our executives. So when thinking about engagement, thinking about revenue, and thinking about adoption, those were all top of mind components that organizations are thinking about and how they're outlining their goals for the whole year. So this actually allowed us to get a seat at the table to at least pitch our ideas. So I would just say, taking a step back before you go in saying, I want to create all of these wonderful programs, I always find it helpful to look at what's the business goals, what's the key, our top 5 objectives. And based on the 5 objectives of the company, how can you be of assistance with your programs to actually drive that momentum? It's really key to success in advocacy. And then next, I would say company size, identifying the program, and successful metrics. I think it's really cool that we both have myself and Juliana here because our company sizes are a little bit different. So the needs are different as well. So I would say with company size, you want to set yourself up with success and understand if you're a startup, right? If you're a startup, you don't really have to take on the entire world, but you want to make sure that you create engaging programs that are going to bring your elite top 10, let's say, customers and showcase them as partners, which is why I think the customer advisory board is so crucial in early stage companies. Those are customers that are invested in you. They have wonderful buy-in, they have wonderful feedback also. And they're usually the customers that become long-term champions for you as well when you start to expand within the company. And then I would say that that's how you are able to actually really identify the program based on company size. And then once you identify your key program, it's really easier to look at the success metrics that you want to commit to long-term. And I would just say, before we kind of really go into details, this is my brain dump of all the different programs that I think work well with customer advocacy. Obviously, you have your customer advisory board, customer councils, executive sponsorship program, roundtables, and executive briefing centers. I would say, given the world that we live in right now, you want to figure out what's going to be successful for your customers in a hybrid world. I found great success with roundtables because it was something that I can kick off virtually, but then also as we start to dive back into person engagements, I can turn these into more of a hybrid model and continue that engagement and continue the interest. But I would say if you're ever trying to figure out where do I actually start, this is a wonderful baseline to see all the wonderful programs that companies would really value. But I would say never take on all, let's see, 5 of them at once. You're going to stress yourself out. So really look at what's the first one that you want to see success in? What's the first one that's going to drive the most value to your executives? And what's the one program that you can commit to at least one positive metric on? So I'll pause there. And Juliana, want to highlight any other items?
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to bring up here, and Kalina, you brought up so many good points. I was taking mental notes to make some comments here, but I think one very important thing to do before you get to defining your product programs also is taking a step back and looking at what is the current culture in your organization from a point of view of, and you mentioned looking at what are the top 5 organizational goals. And I think that's crucial before you make a decision on which direction are you taking, because sharing my own experience, SAP, for anyone that's not familiar with SAP comes from an on-premise world. Is a software company, and until, I don't know how many years, 10 years ago or something, that's when kind of the cloud really came about and everyone moved to the cloud and it all became about the cloud. But until then, it was a marriage. When you bought SAP, it was pretty much a marriage. So it was really, company were implementing in their own hardware. So it was really hard to get out of that. So advocacy, customer references, but customer marketing in general wasn't really a priority because it didn't need to be at that point for the customers, for the company's objectives. And then when they make a change and say, now you're a cloud company, now everything is cloud and we are fully changing our business model, that becomes crucial. That becomes a priority, because it's so easy for customers to then move to a competitor if they want when they are in the cloud, right? Easy, but it's a completely different scenario. So this then becomes a priority. This becomes front and center in the organization, but then people don't really know what to do and don't really know, okay, so how we now have to start working towards that completely different goal. So look back at your organization and see what is the culture and what are people working towards, and see how that fits with our goal. So for me particularly, it was a very long educational process at SAP. And I have my slide that start with the why. I always start with the why to kind of convince people, because we are talking to a lot of people that are very used to doing things they're a certain way. So start with why. Why is that important? Bring data to show why that needs to be a priority moving forward, and connecting that to the business goals. So you brought that slide with the revenue, the adoption, the engagement kind of KPIs, and I think that's critical for anyone. So always think about how your programs will impact those three things, right? So when you start to think about your advocacy program, you also have to think about what is the experience that your customers current have with your organization. If you don't engage with your customers from the very beginning, from the moment that they become your customers, you can't really ask them to be advocates for you, right? So we had to take several steps back and look at what is our onboarding experience for our customers, how we are supporting their implementation, how we are ensuring that they are getting the value that they are expecting, and go through all of this process until we got to advocacy, which was 5 or 6 steps down the road. So then we could have the right to ask our customers to be advocates for us. So I would definitely say, don't jump right into advocacy, but take a moment to look back and look at what's your full customer experience from the moment they sign a contract with you. What are you doing for them? What are you delivering? How are you engaging? And make sure that this experience is working well for you. When you get to building those advocacy programs, you earn the right of going back to the customers and asking for their collaboration, for their participation on that.
So I want to tie maybe those two things together. You mentioned starting with the why, and you mentioned understanding, and Kalina mentioned understanding the company's objectives. And then Kalina, you mapped those 4 or 5 activities that you do to engage customers. So how do you tie all that together to, if you will, having a customer advocacy or culture? So how do you get managers and other people in the company to understand why advocacy is important? You mentioned, Juliana, for example, we're moving to the cloud. That's everybody can leave. Like churn is more evident, but you need to tell that story, and this is why we need advocacy. But how do you make that story explained? Or Kalina, you mentioned having like executive boards and all that stuff, but I'm an executive. Why do I care, right? Why would I participate in executive boards? I mean, how do you tie the why and the activities into some kind of internal ripple of the culture?
I think that's a really good question. So I think the middle piece of that is figuring out who your internal stakeholders are. So currently, on my end, personally, I have to work cross-functionally with marketing, with customer success, and with sales, and also product marketing, but also product management. So what I try to do is start a steering committee for advocacy and actually nominate one of the select few people. So let's just say on a manager side in sales, really understanding from a strategic manager perspective, what are your goals this quarter? And also what are your goals for the next half of the year? Because having them as my advocate makes the program successful for our customers. Same thing with customer success. If I work closely with our head of customer success and I understand what her key metrics are, then that allows me to shape our programs and allow her to, of course, get the buy-in, but if she sees our programs as being valuable to her success, for customer success as a whole. Same thing with the sales manager. If he sees our advocacy programs allowing him to influence and hit his goals, you actually get more feedback. You are able to have more ongoing check-ins with them. And you're also able to really understand the book of business from a field perspective. A lot of the time from a customer marketing and advocacy perspective, we're behind the scenes really showcasing and building the programs from scratch. But sometimes we need to get an external perspective as to what the customers are genuinely looking for, especially from an expansion perspective. So personally, when I think about our customer advisory boards or our executive sponsorship programs, I lean heavily on our sales managers to actually showcase what are your top accounts that you're working on. Who do you actually know? So maybe their champion may be only a senior manager, and their hopes is to identify that director, or their hopes are to develop a better relationship with that vice president. But it's very hard for a manager to just cold, email saying, I would love to talk to you, VP of whatever. But if they're able to partner with us in an engaging advocacy program, the conversation changes. So it's, instead of saying, hey, you're VP of, marketing, I'd love to get on the phone with you and tell you why the product is amazing. We can now say we have a roundtable. This potential person could be a guest speaker where they are able to talk about their experience. That is branding for that VP that allows them to engage and network with someone else that they wouldn't have the opportunity to do so without us providing that platform. So now that manager, that sales manager is no longer selling, but they're actually building an organic relationship by inviting that VP in. So instead of not having any opportunity to speak with that VP, they now have a ongoing email thread relationship. And then if that VP finds the roundtable, let's say, successful, or they love that experience because they now all of a sudden have 50 more LinkedIn friends and people are messaging them saying, I loved your inputs. And now they're seen as this expert, which they already are, but just getting that validation. Now that VP sees them as a partner and they want to do more with us. So the relationship is so organic. So I know that's a long answer, but I would say, taking a step back, we have wonderful advocacy programs, but sometimes in order to get buy-in from the very top of the organization, number one, you align those key company goals, but you have to understand who are your counterparts, who are your peers that are going to help you be successful if you help them be successful.
Yeah, and to add to that a little bit, Kalina, what we did in the beginning, because again, it was a very long educational and buying process for us at SAP. When we first started, the customer marketing team was, yes, map all of your stakeholders and all of your key contributors to your programs. And every time I went to a meeting to, make a proposal on what we are telling you to do here, what we are suggesting that we build here together, I always came to the conversation with their KPIs and how I'm impacting their KPIs, and never the marketing KPIs. Of course, I have my own, we want to see how is the campaign performing, et cetera, and click-throughs and views and impact and blah, blah, blah. But the business don't necessarily care about that. So I would always search for, okay, what is this person measured for, and how this program is directly impacting that. So how we are bringing more renewals, how we are increasing the adoption of the solution, and those types of things that the business is actually care about. And if you can't answer those questions, don't go to the conversation, because probably you need to do a little bit more work to be ready for that, because that's how you're going to convince them. If you show them, okay, this program, this is how I'm seeing that you have, for example, an adoption issue. The adoption of the solution in the market of their competitors is at 89%. Ours is at 63% on average, for example. We need to increase that adoption. And with this program, I expect that by the end of the year, I'll help you increasing 5%, whatever it is, right? And this is how we are doing it. Then you're ready to have the conversation. If you can answer that question, do the work, because this is going to be what will convince them at the end of the day.
I love that. I think that's great. So both of you gave examples where you basically very much aligned with the business, right? So Kalina was talking about helping that AE or get more VPs, more decision makers, and get those relationships. You're talking about helping, with adoption or whatnot versus attrition. So I guess what you're basically saying is that to create if we want an advocacy or organizational culture, we need first to meet all those different departments within our organization, maybe customer success, maybe sales, maybe marketing. I mean, adoption might be sales. I don't know if adoption is CS and, enablement, and understand what their hardships are and kind of think how customers or advocacy or customer marketing can help them solve for those, and then come back with an idea, with a plan. So it's very much like, in a way, you need to talk to everybody and understand their challenges and see how with customers you could help. And if you agree with that, my question would be, how do you get their attention? How do you get them to kind of stop everything and talk to you, tell you what their challenges are, brainstorm on how they could actually, together leverage customers? And another thing, maybe, do you have like your own champions? Like, have you found ways to have within each department people who are your, I don't know, your champions within?
I like that. Actually, kudos to Andrew for showcasing his programs and generating leads through reviews. I think that's stellar. But I would say you made a good point, Gal. I would say the biggest thing is meeting your stakeholders where they are and your peers where they are, right? Coming into a conversation or a meeting or just organization and just understanding, where have you already found success? I think that's key, because you never want to approach someone saying, I'm going to fix this problem, and identify that they potentially are doing something wrong. I think that the biggest thing of creating the culture of advocacy is showcasing that we want to just complement all of the wonderful work that our peers have already been doing. And that's all the way from community, from marketing, from customer success, from sales, you name it. There's a baseline already. The reason why I think many advocacy members are hired is because they understand that it works. They understand that customer centricity is key, but they now need someone to focus in on, how do we expand this? How do we continue to benefit our customers? So I would say that the first thing on my end, just personally, for creating a customer culture is seeking to learn something when I'm engaging with a peer of mine. Because if I learn and I listen first, then I can approach them and understand what they've already found success in. And I become a partner to them personally, not a threat, or not someone that's taking more of their time. And I think that's the biggest thing right now, especially in our environment. We're moving so fast. You have to figure out, why would someone give you extra time to build your program? And so in this case, if you showcase it as a partnership, then all of a sudden your customer culture is just thriving, because everyone sees the benefit of your program. And it's not an I program, it's a company program. That we all serve the same customers is the best thing I like to approach things with. If I have a top 25 list of customers, all of my other peers actually have that same 25. And so it's always amazing to just approach them with the current work that they're doing and how we can amplify each other.
Yeah, and I think the part of this learning is also, I feel that it's also being humble, I want to say, because at the end of the day, you don't start having the first conversation with the VP of the area, right? You don't start going and asking all the questions to that person, but you start building those relationships with the team first, and really approaching them in a way of, I want to learn about what you do. I want to learn about your team scope. I want to learn about how I can help you to deliver your results. So start having this type of conversations and building this type of relationships, gather as much information as you can. And then you build your business case and you build your speech and everything. And then you go to the leadership team and, ask for the buy-in. And also always recognize the people that have been helping you along the way. I feel that this is very, very effective. So always calling out people's names, especially to the leadership. And when launch a new program, I always try to make a point of, shouting out to everyone that has been involved, truly involved, and key to that contribution to that project. I feel that this will help you kind of carry people with you along the way, and people will continue supporting you and helping you and providing you information. Oh, you are muted, Gil.
Yeah, I see that. Sorry. So I love that, and we'll come back to the point of how you kind of elevate the people that helped you. I think it's very important. But I also want to take some time for Q&A. So, Ari, hi Ari, what's up? Asked like you actually, Juliana. So in your eyes, you were talking earlier on about adoption. So in your eyes, 5, 6, steps for having between customer journey, like. Between the onboarding part and all the way to the end destination of advocacy, right? So how do you take them? How do you work with the onboarding team, I guess, in the journey to take from, new customer to advocate?
I love that question because this is actually, I actually divided this journey in 6 steps when we first started planning. Okay. So at that time, the very first thing that I did with the team was launch this project that we called it the Moments That Matter, which was identifying what was the critical points in this customer journey that we had to get absolutely right in order to get customers to be advocates at the end of the day. So those steps for us was, so onboarding, absolutely first, right? So it was onboarding with go live in our case, value realization. So making sure that the customer is getting what they expected to be getting out of your solution, which sometimes doesn't happen. So you have to jump in and take action there. We had renewal. We had adoption was the 6th. I'm missing one. Sorry.
Okay.
It will come back.
If you're talking about renewal, it's like a full year cycle. So you don't turn them into advocates before they close a full year in SAP's case?
No, it doesn't. It's not necessarily linear, right? We'll go different directions. It's not necessarily linear here, but those are kind of the 6 moments that you want to make sure that you are getting right. So it will depend case by case. Sometimes renewal will come first, sometimes advocacy will come first. Right. Those are definitely directly related. If the customer is not intending to renew with you, they'll probably not become an advocate, right? And if they do renew with you, it means normally it means that they are happy. So you have better chances of turning them into advocates. So those are definitely very, very close together, but definitely onboarding, go live, value realization, renewal, advocacy, and I'm missing one that will come back. I'll actually take a look at my old.
Maybe like training certification. Some companies that's one of their triggers.
Yeah, enablement for us was part of adoption. It's part of adoption. Which is within value realization, but I'll look and I'll go back to that answer. Okay, but definitely, this is the process that you want to be looking at. So definitely start from the beginning. What is the support that you are giving them from the moment that they are signing? And you might discover, and I think it's important to look at that if you don't already have, because I think also some companies, they already have that very well defined, especially companies that are born on the cloud. They normally have this onboarding phase pretty figured out, and it's easier for you to kind of go faster to advocacy. In our case, it wasn't, because what I mentioned before of being an on-prem company. You didn't really have to be so concerned about that, because after you sold that project, the customer would implement with a partner, and the partner would kind of take over a lot of that relationship. So it wasn't a big concern, and that changes now. So we really have to fix from the very beginning, from the onboarding point until we could get to, okay, now what we are doing for advocacy, right? Now that we kind of fixed all the other ones.
Cool. So back to the topic earlier, Kalina, how do you give kudos to people who in the organization that kind of, you helped them, they achieved their goals, and now you're giving back to them and even kind of elevating them at the end of the day to also elevate your activity. But how would you do that?
Good question. So I would say we have like a deals and delight channel that showcases all of our progress with some of our biggest deals. And then also just to keep advocacy relevant, I try to give a monthly update of what's going on with our programs, what's our wins, what's up and coming. And then I have a special thank you section. And that special thank you section actually goes a long way, because sometimes many people, I would say our AEs, they don't realize that they're doing so much for us, or same thing with our customer success managers. They're usually helping us with recruitment, they're giving us insights, etc. But I would say on a monthly basis, being able to call out 1 or 2 key members that helped you goes a long way. And then also feedback loop. You know, everyone loves feedback, regardless if it's constructive or positive. I think that on a regular basis, regardless of what programs we're pushing out for advocacy, just showcasing it can't be stood up alone. You know, you just can't do that by yourself. So I would say every program that I've been able to successfully launch, I look at who has helped me cross-functionally, and making sure, number one, I give positive feedback, showcasing how they were crucial to that success. One perfect example would be my community partner. He runs our full-on community for our champions. Our champions are at different levels. And so he has been a crucial part of my success in running my advocacy programs that are maybe from an executive perspective. And so being able to showcase that cross-functional partnership to, I would say, our actual global revenue team, by putting those notes out, showcasing this wasn't just a customer success project, or this wasn't just a customer advocacy project, but it actually was a co-partnership with our community department, which sits in marketing. So I say that goes a long way, because I just think about time, right? If you have a peer that's giving you 2 hours out of your workday, and maybe that's 2 hours Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, that's a big chunk of time. And if it technically is not a particular project that they're aiming to launch within a certain quarter, it technically isn't really part of their stack. So I would say, just if someone's giving you their time, it's always nice to appreciate them and showcase them in a positive light by glorifying them on an update for the company. And then 2, we all have different reviews on a yearly basis. Being able to showcase that cross-functional partnership is always key.
Yeah. So a question, actually, let's take another Q&A from Vernon. He's saying, like, you know, I'm hitting friction with top revenue and customer success leaders for buy-in. So part of what we're talking about right now. What tactics can you explore to get them more involved? And he's also mentioning that he hasn't launched his program yet. So it's basically, you know, they're going to launch in October, November timeframe. And so there's no proof to show what they've done. So it's really getting buy-in before you launch the program, and creating an advocacy, you know, culture and, you know, excitement within your internal organization, even though nothing has happened and they haven't seen any results. How do you kind of tap into that?
I could take a stab at this one. I would say we're actually building our executive briefing center, and obviously we have a virtual executive briefing program, and then also the center. And I would say our center is amazing, but we are not allowed in the office quite yet. So being able to showcase that buzz, get the excitement going, has been crucial for us. So giving, I would say, monthly updates. So we do different webinars, and we're actually doing a tour to all of the different departments to showcase what this program actually is, what's the value and benefits, of course, for the customer, but then there's a section that says, what's the benefits for you? It's just not a program for advocacy, but it actually is an influential program for your segment as well. I would say this has worked really well for our product management side of things, because they want the feedback, they want the hardcore customer feedback. And so being able to see that as a program that can increase that has been, you know, it's something where their eyes are lighting up, you know, instead of looking at their phones when they're in the presentation. But also one thing that I've recently have found helpful is Playbooks. And so for us, every single program that we're designing, I personally have learned, if I write a playbook and I showcase what program actually helps each department, and I show, for example, our customer success managers, how do they actually plug in our program so they can be successful? Being able to give them a playbook is crucial, because now they're empowering themselves. They actually can take that program and actually put it in their own playbook. So I would say with customer advocacy, we're always really busy trying to build the program and then get buy-in. But I think that we have to make sure we put notes and actual jotting down our content. So I don't know the saying, but what I realize is if you can actually make something extremely simple and document it, you always think that, hey, they're not going to need you when you just document it and actually put the information down. It's actually the opposite. You become extremely valuable when you document step by step. Here's what you do to be successful. Here's what stage you use me. Here's how you find success. Being able to give those playbooks to all of your cross-functional departments allows them to want to engage with you more because you're helping them be independent and still leverage your programs.
Okay, Juliana.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love that. I think playbooks they definitely work really, really, really well. And more than you think, honestly. I had this experience too of when we start really documenting things and making things easy for other teams to use, to leverage, it's super valuable. But also I feel that when you are launching something new, it's always a bet, right? You always have to start somewhere. You're not going to have results from the get-go, but you always have to, you are working to get somewhere. So what's your objective? And as they have their goals as well, they have their KPIs, their numbers. It's not guaranteed that anyone will actually get there, but they are working towards that direction. So I think it's important that you show, this is what I expect to get. It's a new program. No one knows. You might exceed. And I always prefer to overachieve than underachieve. So try to be realistic and always give yourself a little margin to say, hey, I delivered 30% more than what we expected here. So try to be a little conservative in this very beginning if you never did that before. But you have to have a number to even how you are going to know that you are successful. So you have to have goals for yourself. And this is what you share also in the beginning, right? This is what we expect to get out of this. If you don't, you have to look back and see why this didn't work. But you have to have your very defined goals from the beginning. Otherwise, at the end of the year, you won't know if you were successful at all, if you don't have anything to compare yourself against. So.
Yeah, and you both mentioned the playbook, so I'll double down on Lori's question. And can you give an example of one of those playbooks? Like, can you share with us an example of a playbook where you kind of jotted down step by step that helped you?
I can touch on that one. Or Juliana, do you want?
Yeah, go ahead. I can comment later.
I think, well, right now, this is extremely relevant to me right now because I'm writing the playbook for our roundtables for FY23. And so I would say with the roundtables, obviously we started off remotely and we found great success, but now we're thinking about what does hybrid look like? So we're never going to get rid of the virtual roundtables because we're able to connect someone from Canada and New York and San Francisco all at the same time. But we realized as we become back in person, we can do more of a engaging in-person roundtable. But the big thing now is we had to leverage and utilize multiple departments to make these roundtables successful. And so the key thing now is highlighting what is the mission and the value of our roundtables. What are the type of customers are we targeting? Will we have different roundtables based on different segments of our customer base? If you are in Europe, how do you also utilize our roundtables without per se leveraging a roundtable in North America? But how do you actually just take exactly what we have on this one pager document and be able to replicate it, but also feel confident that you're going to find success in it? And then I would say breaking things down from a measurement perspective and a request perspective for, let's say, your different departments, so customer success and your revenue teams. What do you actually want them to do when roundtables are being launched? How do they work backwards, right, from their calendar? So if you're 4 weeks out, what is an AE expected to do to find success? What is a CSM expected to do to find success in the roundtable? And then in the end of that kind of playbook, always really stating, if you do exactly what this playbook suggests, what are you expected to obtain in the end, and really making sure that your counterparts can outline their key goals and showcase why they would be engaged with the roundtable is something that I'm working on. So ideally, when you click on that playbook, if you're a customer success manager in the time, our table of content, you should be able to click customer success, drop down there and actually know step by step on a 5-week basis. Here's my book of business. Here's what I have to do. Here's who I'm going to invite because it falls in line with, the expectations and the goals of the roundtable. And then in the end, if they have to give monthly reviews or quarterly reviews as to how they've engaged, they know exactly how to write those sort of success stories if their customer attends.
Yeah, one example that I have was from an adoption program that we run, where we created content for customers that we call digital customers. So pretty much our customers that don't have a dedicated customer success manager to them, to help with their adoption of their different solutions, right? So we created all this program, and we are running the program, but we are not touching the customers at that point initially that actually had a customer success manager, because we don't know necessarily what's going on in that organization, and the customer success manager does, right? But what we did was create a playbook for the customer success managers to leverage this content that we were created for their customers in the moment that they need it. So we created this playbook with like, how do you use this content? When do you use this content? And how do you make it available for your customer, et cetera, et cetera. And we made everything available and very easy for them to kind of assemble the things together that they need for different scenarios with their customers. So when their customer were having an adoption issue with whatever, they could easily go in and find different things that they could offer for their customers instead of, trying to find, okay, depending on what is the problem, where do I point them to, etc. So that was also something that worked very well.
Cool. Yeah, so I think the next question here would be, and I think this kind of aligns to also put it kind of engaging different departments. So Matthias is talking about for customer content, customer evidence, do you have a partnership with like content marketing? How do you get, so we're talking about, getting, an advocacy culture and getting everybody engaged. So there's some people that you need to be engaged, like, sales, because you want them to help you, and also give them results. But there's some people from internal departments like content marketing that you need help to write the customer stories or do the interviews or whatnot. So have you leveraged, in some companies, they outsource that or they have resources in their own team, but in some company, again, it's just another team in marketing. So you need to work with other teams inside marketing, and they need to understand the value of all this work. So how would you, I guess, engage them and get their collaboration?
Yeah, we work very close with many organizations within marketing. So definitely product marketing is our big contributor with content, right? Because we are not expert in all the solutions. So we work with product marketing for more of the technical kind of the type of content. We do have a team that helps us to actually build content, more of a storytelling type of team that will help us get to what is the right format to deliver that information, and think of new ways to deliver information and actually help with copywriting, etc. We do outsource part of this, but I think SAP, not all organizations will have the structure that SAP has, just because, we're talking 100,000 people. So most of the organizations that I know would outsource a lot of that. We do a lot of that internally. We also work with customer reference. So customer reference is separate from customer marketing. We are in two parallel organizations. Ultimately, we all report to the same SVP, but we are separate organizations. So customer reference, very, very big partner for us. And then of course, sales and the area that we call at SAP CE&X, which is customer engagement and experience. So the customer success managers and all those other customer facing type of roles sit in that organization. So those are our big partners, big contributors in my case.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we have another great question from Ari, and I think it's very important. Like, how do you set goals or KPIs if you don't have a benchmark to start with, right? So, I mean, I'll just tap in with my 2 cents on that. So first of all, one way to find the benchmark, Ari, and everybody's just ask other colleagues, like people on this session or in other communities, kind of brainstorm with them. But another thing I would say is building what that you have, like a buy-in committee. So you want to have a buy-in committee. So you want to have one person from success, customer success, and one person from sales, one person from sales enablement, and one person from product marketing or product, and create a committee of people that are your hubs of I don't know, customer advocacy, customer marketing in the organization, and ask them about their goals, what their KPIs are. They probably already have KPIs, they've been in the organization, they know what they need. And then once you know their KPIs, derive and see how each one of them, at least one or two of their KPIs, you can help them with. So the benefit to them is that you're going to help them with some of their KPIs. The benefit for you is that you start understanding what your KPIs are and those KPIs, how they align. But that's like my 2 cents. I don't know, Kalina, if you have anything to add on Ari's question.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's just say, for me personally, right now, I've been building the foundation of all of our customer advocacy programs. So I've actually just been trying to look at the influence that we're doing with utilization. So on my end, on Salesforce, I can see the increase of utilization and adoption. And then also the penetration of how much growth we potentially could gain within that account. So that's been quite helpful in identifying some of our key executives. So I would say it's a gamble, right? As you're starting to develop your programs, it's trial and error. But I would say just I usually approach it where what have I done that I've seen success in, and then I have my steering committee of members that I actually try to bounce these ideas off of, and based on their key metrics, especially when it comes to ARR or utilization or adoption, I try to make sure that somehow my metrics are tied into some of my peers, because it's just a lot easier to tell the story, but also a lot easier to figure out, do we need to change something? Do we keep going this route? And so that's what I've seen success in. I would say it's constantly going to evolve, right? There's never going to be one solid metric where that's it. Hey, this is, we're going to produce this amount of events and this is going to get us X, Y, and Z. I think that every year is different, especially the environment, right? How your measurements for the times of COVID is going to be a lot different than when we're back in person. So I've just been a little bit more honest with myself and also honest with my counterparts as to it's an organic metric that we're going to constantly work on together, because right now we're a whole year with COVID, right? So we've seen success, but it's success in a total different way. So I'd be keen to see and be able to compare also next year too, if it's going to be half, a true hybrid engagement advocacy platform. Just being able to compare that on a regular basis is what I'm looking forward to doing.
And Juliana, how do you approach KPIs and building those when you're just, compared to others?
Yeah, so when we first started, the thing we did was literally look in the market, look at what our competitors are doing and how they are measuring themselves, and what our partners are doing, and even what our customers are doing. So we literally looked in the industry. So we brought in industry KPIs, and what Kalina just said, the KPIs of the business. So from the very beginning, when we started building all of those post-sale programs, so when we talk from onboarding until advocacy, we call all post-sale. So when we started building all of those programs, we looked at what are the KPIs of the business. So the CE&X team, the success managers, etc. What are those guys being measured against? And those are going to be our KPIs as well. So at the end of the day, we are being measured against adoption, against engagement, against renewals. So all of that, we are measured against marketing KPIs too, performance, campaign performance, etc. This is a very, very tiny part of our metrics. We are using business and industry.
And by the way, I love Andrew's comment on how he worked with different, stakeholders in each one of the departments, sales, marketing, whatnot, and brainstorm with them on how they can infuse advocacy within their own realm. I think, it's a great practice. So thank you for sharing that, Andrew. I would say back to the KPIs and then maybe other questions. And I know we have 5 more minutes to end. So it's great that we have so many questions. So back to the KPIs, I think also you can start small. You can start by basically engaging. So let's take a very practical example. Okay, like references or reference pool. You basically go to the sales team and you say, okay, but how many reference calls do you think you're doing today? How many of those do you think that are leveraging references? More importantly, how many do you think we may be lost because that we didn't have a reference, or that maybe what took us 4 months instead of 2 months because we didn't have references. And when you have that debate with them, then you get to some kind of numbers. And then even if you'll be surprised, but even if you improve on those numbers 20%, they're probably going to be happy. With advocacy, you can probably improve on those numbers 50% or 100%. But I'm just saying, that's just one example. You can talk about, Juliana talked about, adoption. So what are our numbers around adoption now? And what would be a metric that would make a good improvement, even if it's just, again, 2 points, 10 points, doesn't really matter. And how do we get to that? So I think putting in numbers, putting in KPIs, they should definitely be measurable, but you shouldn't, kind of overcommit. And you'll be surprised sometimes organizations, once they even a 10% commit, like improvement is very significant in a lot of businesses. It's great. You don't have to look at, 100%, improve on the first year. That's maybe a bit too high. Cool.
I'm sorry,
So,
can I just make a comment that I feel it's really important to hear also? I think we sometimes we see this big opportunity in front of us. There are so many things that can be done, but we can't do all of them. And I think Kalina mentioned that in the very beginning, don't try to do all at once. We started this process, in my case at SAP 5 years ago, and we are still just barely halfway there. It has to be phased, and we were very conscious from the very beginning to say we're going to take a phased approach. We have to walk before we run. We are not going to get, you're not going to solve all the problems of the world in a year or in 6 months or whatever. So I feel that it's important to take a phased approach, try things out, start small and then grow, and you start to naturally see different directions, and you start to naturally see what works and what doesn't work, and you start to be more and more effective with the learnings that you are getting. So that would definitely be something that I've learned. Don't try to go all the way. That's why we started with the moments that matter. When we map, okay, those are kind of 6 big things that we have to focus on. Let's start with the first onboarding. You're not looking at that now. And then, okay, we start, of course, it doesn't have to be perfect until we move to the next one, but start small, first step, then second step, and then you grow. And the moment that I was missing was emergencies. What do you do when a customer has a problem with you?
Right. Okay, now we have like a few more minutes. So first of all, before we end this, thank you very much, Kalina. Thank you very much, Juliana, for your time and your tips and your feedback. We'll take a few more questions, but before we go into that, so we appreciate it. All your answers. And I guess people can connect to you on LinkedIn. So that's one thing. Second thing, thank you for everybody that joined us. Again, this was recorded and we'll share that. And the answers that we couldn't answer, of course, we'll try to answer post-event and give you some feedback on that. I guess we can take 2 more questions, but before we take those 2 more questions, any last words or tips from you, Kalina, and you, Juliana, before we answer the last questions?
I would say be patient with your programs. It's a marathon. It's not a quick, I'm going to launch this and that's it. If you're going to be in advocacy, know that it's a marathon, and you're going to find success, and it's going to get easier and easier. But if you're just starting out, give yourself a little bit of slack.
Right.
And know that you have a community. I would say the Slack channel that Gail started, I use that community for everything. So I would definitely say leverage the other people that are in the engagements with you.
Right.
Juliana, anything from you?
Same for me. What I just mentioned, just take a phased approach, and definitely reach out to your colleagues, to your peers in the industry. Extremely helpful. We didn't have anything when we created the first customer marketing team at all. We didn't necessarily know what to do. It was really just from trying to learn from what other organizations were doing that we started. So
cool. Yeah, so thank you very much. I guess 2 more questions we had. So one of them was from an anonymous person, but we'll answer anyway. So like he recently, joined a company, or she, and they started an advocacy program, and they don't know if they should include a community in their program. Do you think it's, crucial to have that in their advocacy program when they start?
I can take a stab at this. I would say actually outline how much support do you have before you create the community? Who do you actually want to be engaged in that community? What's the purpose of the community? What resources are you providing these customers? And then also, what's the long-term game plan for your community? Because that's a big lift. If you are the only person running customer advocacy, I highly don't recommend put another community as its own department. So keep that in mind. If you get support and you actually have a map of what you're going to accomplish in that community and who your target audience is, then start thinking about it. But I would spend time writing that playbook in detail and actually presenting it a few times before you commit to such a big project.
Cool. And I guess, yeah, Juliana.
Nope. The communities are huge in their own animal. So definitely don't create a community for the sake for just to say that you have a community. Make sure that you have the people, the time, the content, the resources, everything set up. I think there's a lot of planning before you create a community.
Yeah, like we said, there are a lot of elements of advocacy that don't necessarily involve a community. So you need to think of it in a broader way. Last question will actually go to something that we've talked about before, but everybody loved your playbook examples. So I guess the last question would be, Kalina, you gave one example with maybe doing a, some kind of executive board, but telling the A's exactly what they need to do to prepare to the executive board and when they need to invite people or what they need to or whatnot. So, I mean, we've got that question again from Jonathan and other people, like, can you give more examples of a playbook that people maybe that you have in mind of a simple step that you gave others so they could implement advocacy in their own way?
Yeah, well, I think this goes to our partnership. We're actually working on our own ebook, which is TBD. But I would say me and Juliana are going to be launching upcoming webinars that go into a little bit more detail. Look out for those in November. I just need to be able to flesh it out a little bit more, but I'm happy to go into additional detail in November for you all.
Cool. Okay, so I think with that, we're over time. Thank you very much again. Appreciate it so much. I think we've enjoyed your session. People have still stayed all the way to the end, so you've answered a lot of questions. And good luck, everybody, with creating a customer advocacy culture in your organizations. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.